Welcome, everybody. I think we're going to finish chapter 3 tonight. Get done with what is. Any questions about what we've done so far that you want to bring up now, or anybody want to share about flashcards or anything? Then I guess we'll just jump in. I think we'll finish it easily tonight. There's just 2.5 pages left. So let's do that, and then we'll share for whatever time is left. Why don't you read the first section, please, Brooks? I'm on 49. What is does not respond to prayer.
We have said that what is eternal outside of time. The idea of what is starting something that it is not doing now, has not been doing eternally, and will not be doing eternally, or the idea of what is not doing something that it is doing eternally does not make sense, has no meaning. And what is exactly the same to everyone and everything. It is not withholding anything. It can't withhold anything.
Not only is it doing what it's doing eternally, but its spirit incorporeal. It doesn't know about anything material. It doesn't have anything material. It can't give anything material. And it knows nothing of health and sickness, life and death. They're part of the material human experience. What is eternally, no variations. All it knows is eternal being. It can't give or take away life, health, or things. So what is clearly not influenceable or usable. Any prayer which is designed to get a God to do something that it is not doing right now, or to influence a God to be any way other than it is currently being, is clearly not a prayer to what is. It's a prayer to a false concept of God, and concepts of God can't answer prayers.
So let's stop there. Because that could be disturbing. I mean, we've hinted at it a lot in the first 2 chapters, but do you get it? Well, first of all, if God is spirit, it's not material, and if God is the substance of everything, then everything is spirit, so there are no material things. So what is certainly doesn't have anything material, so asking for anything material makes no sense at all. It just can't make any sense. So it really puts a quash on the idea of praying for something, the supplication type praying. And the other thing is that we said earlier that what is outside of time. It's eternal. So nothing's changing in what is sense of things. It's all going on, and it's all eternally being what it is being. And the next chapter is called What Appears to Be, and when we get to the next chapter we'll talk about what it is we're seeing and all of this stuff and get into that at some length. But what we've established, or talked as if we'd established, we haven't established it at all, but we've made a case for the fact that God is eternal and outside of time, and therefore everything that's going on with God, with what is eternal. And so the whole idea of getting God to do something that it's not doing, or to start something that it hasn't started, or to stop something that it hasn't stopped, or to give something that it isn't giving, or to withdraw something that is currently allowed. All of that stuff makes no sense, because it's all within time, and it's all assuming that it's possible to influence what is to change, and that makes no sense. So you might, what I suggest is that as you go through the week or the rest of your life, or however long you want to play the game, whenever you're inclined to pray, led to pray, take a look at what it is you're praying for, that you want to pray for or pray about, and take a look at what it is you think you're praying to. And I'm not saying don't pray, and I'm not saying this is right, I'm not saying anything about that, but look at what you're praying for and look at what you are praying to and see if that makes any sense to you, to be praying to whatever it is you think you're praying to. Does it make sense that there is such a being? And does it make sense to ask it for whatever it is you're about to ask it for? And of course, Orthodox religion will say, of course it is, even though it doesn't seem to work. But given the framework that we've established here, see if you can find a meaningful prayer. Yeah.
I find this concept really difficult to absorb because it's completely contradictory to everything that I have been taught.
Absolutely.
And I've always hated the praying idea.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like such a waste of time.
Yep.
And when I'm reading this, it seems like it's so logical to look at it and think of it, that it's in a big situation, and that it's not, it's a different concept. And so for me, it leaves me kind of feeling a little lost, like I'm just kind of going to, we'll call it limbo space or whatever, and it's just, I'm kind of just there. And it's not that I need to do anything, but I don't, it's just kind of, I don't know where I'm headed or where I'm not headed or whether there should be any heading at all.
Excellent. Yeah, it sounds like the emptying out part is working. So the fact is that we are very conditioned to have a bunch of concepts, and they don't make any sense. Okay? And we all really know down here that prayer doesn't work. I mean, we all really know that in spite of the conditioning, in spite of what they're saying. We all have always, for a long time, really known that prayer is a hit or miss thing. A bit I did about praying to my cat is true, and we stack the deck so that if we get it, God's nice to us. And if we don't get it, God's nice to us because we shouldn't have had it. And if we get it and it doesn't work out, God's nice to us because He's teaching us a lesson, and it's just such nonsense. So yeah, if you've seen that that's nonsense, that's a great breakthrough, because now there's room for you to discover what your reality is. Okay? That's what the emptying it out is all about. That's also what the dark night of the soul is about, that you hear about. Before you can get a new relationship or experience of God, you have to get rid of the old one. Okay? The old one is preventing the new one. All right? And if you get rid of the old one, you have to do so before you get the new one. And here's that gap that you just described. And yeah, that's what happens. Here's that gap, because there's nothing there. And now, having created a vacuum, it will fill with something. And presumably that something will be a higher concept, almost undoubtedly, than the one you've been working with. Perhaps it will work better. Or perhaps you'll have, I don't know what your understanding will be, but undoubtedly your new understanding will be higher, because you won't settle for anything as at the level of the one that you've just given up because it doesn't work. So that's always what dark night of the soul is about. You throw out what you had because it doesn't work, and here's the vacuum, here's the hole, and you got nothing, and something new, a new understanding comes in that's invariably higher. And that's how it works. Yes?
The dark night of the soul, that also applies to giving up resistance behaviors and stuff like that? Giving up old patterns that aren't working?
Well, it's not quite, because you're giving up resistance behaviors for a reason, and also when you give up resistance behavior, you're you're not creating a vacuum. What you're doing is leaving your kid without a prop. So you're experiencing your kid's terror. So the uncomfortability that happens when you give up a resistance behavior is that your kid's scared. Okay? But this is not that case. Here it is that we've got an old concept that we see clearly doesn't work, and so we have to drop it. Okay? And now we don't have anything because we don't have a concept that does work yet, because we couldn't have a concept that worked while we had a concept that didn't work. Okay? So you've got to dump and then fill in. And this the dark night of the soul is not an individual thing. It happens over and over and over as we rise higher and higher, because everything has to go. It's really true that every concept that we have is false and has to go. And they don't have to all go at once. That would be a big gap. But starting by throwing out God is not a bad start, And I understand what this is carefully doing is making the case for throwing out God in prayer. Okay? As we know them. Alright? And that's necessary because it's false and it doesn't work. And when you throw out God and prayer, as we know them, it's some of the dust that's on the mirror there, the lens that you're looking through, and you're looking through it reality, but you can't see it because all you can see is your concepts, okay? And so now these concepts are gone and you can see more clearly. Now when you can see absolutely clearly, you will see nothing but God, and that will meet your need, okay? But you can't know what that means until you see it. You can take my word for it or not, there's no reason why you should, but as you discovering reality and discovering God is not finding something new, it's getting the dust off your lens, getting the paint off your lens, getting the stuff off your lens so that you can see clearly what has always been there. It's here, right now, here it is. And we've got all these concepts that prevent us from seeing getting what it is. And we'll talk more about that later on. Several times we'll talk more about that. Yes, Tom?
We're frequently asked to think about a family member that's ill or something in a meeting. I don't think we can ask for a cure or anything like that, but what? Bring them into consciousness. What are we doing when we kind of think about that kind of thing in the morning on meditation?
I have no idea what you're doing. Everybody's doing something different, and most people aren't doing anything constructive.
No answer.
When we get back to chapter 4 and 5 and we start talking about healing and stuff like that, you will see that there is positive stuff you can do, which is to know that the lie that we're seeing is a lie. Okay? If your consciousness is, if you can rise in consciousness to the point that you realize that the illness is nonsense, that it can't be, then that rising in consciousness, if they are associated with your consciousness, will lift them perhaps out of their illness. And that's what healing's all about. We'll get to that in 2 or 3 chapters from now. We'll get there, but there is positive stuff you can do. And above all, you can stop doing the negative stuff, like agreeing they're sick and worrying about them. Yes.
What about just the thankfulness you feel instead of praying when you're asking for something, but just is the thankfulness, is it just out of fear because you're not going to still feel right? Not
necessarily. Sheer gratitude is a perfectly wonderful thing to do. That's probably the highest human emotion you can achieve, It's just short of realization, and that's great. I mean, the only form of prayer that I've ever, since I was 14, the only form of prayer that I've ever exercised is thanks. And lots of times thanks seems appropriate to whatever is, thanks to what is. Not thanks to a concept of God because it's given to me, but because my life is so filled with joy and bliss, thanks, And that thanks, when you think about it, and again I would say, think about what it is you're saying and what you're saying it to, there's nothing on thanking. And thanking is not to accomplish anything, because I know that, I won't get more or less. I won't get less if I don't thank, and I won't get more if I do thank, because there's nobody to change or anything. Nonetheless, sometimes I just feel joy bubbling up, and it gets expressed as thanks. And the joy and the bubbling up and the thanks and the realization of the presence of God all get confused into one nice thing. It's a really pretty blissful place to be, and that's perfectly fine. And a prayer of thanks is a perfectly reasonable start towards that, a way into that. So thanks is a pretty good prayer. Bernie, in the morning meeting, often says that he has 2 one-word prayers that he uses, and I'm thinking of it, and they're pretty high definitions of prayer. In the morning he says whatever, and in the evening he says thanks. And I think, if you're going to pray, that's about as plain as you can get, And, I'm in acceptance of what is, and at the end of the day, thanks, that was nice, and with no attempt to influence, and I think that's a perfectly reasonable set of prayer. And I'm not saying don't pray. I'm just saying look at your prayer and become aware of what you're praying for and what you're praying to, and see how it sits with you, and your sense of the whole thing will rise.
I find that I pretty much have changed my, from what I came in practicing like the AA prayers into where I'm at now, that's really evolved for me and changed, but I still do, and maybe, I guess it's exactly the kind of here is the concept. So, you hear that shit needing in the back of my mind, like, you're going to do this prayer, and, the whatever prayers that are outlined, and you hear, so that still comes up a little bit, but most of it is, it doesn't really bother me, but all the ones too about we, pray or ask God to keep us sober, the one I learned in early sobriety, and sometimes those still, I find myself kind of resorting back to that or going there because it's like, it's a concept that I have that I'm supposed to do this. So sometimes I struggle with those a little bit that I think I'm supposed to do to stay sober or whatever.
And that's the concept.
Right. Because it's been ingrained so many years now that that's what you do. You hear it talked about, and so it's one of the...
And the fact is that particular one has been ingrained in you, but the Orthodox Church has ingrained all sorts of prayers into all sorts of people that they feel exactly the same way about. Mm-hmm. And the idea about a God that's going to keep you sober, if you pray, it won't if you don't, is a ridiculous concept. Mm-hmm. None of that's happening.
So maybe just examining them, like you pointed out there, and seeing, like you said, examining each one.
What are you asking? What are you asking who? Who are you asking to do what? And the implications are horrendous. And that would imply that there's a God that's going to let you get drunk because you forgot to ask. Right? Whoa.
Is there any similarity to believing in prayer and believing in other dualistic, mesmeric stuff like germs or whatever? If you believe it, then you manifest it?
Sure. Absolutely. Prayer can be a mental power, and prayer groups are an example of mental power. But the confusion is don't think it's God that's doing it.
Certainly.
Yeah, that's the confusion. I mean, prayer groups work. If enough people get together and believe that prayer has power, and all pray for the same thing, and that power will manifest, because mind has power over matter. So, prayer groups work, but they don't work because they're influencing God. They work because they believe they work, and our experience is the outpicturing of our beliefs. So, get the powers right. Joel tells a great story about a preacher, in fact, who wrote a book about the power of prayer, and he had people pray for one group of plants that they'd be healthy and well, and pray for another group, a different group pray for another group of plants that they wither and die. And the plants were identical, and they were in identical situations, and the group that was prayed for healthy flourished, and the group that was prayed for that they died. And he claimed that this was a demonstration of the power of prayer. And Joel says, you mean God kills plants because we ask him to? You know, and he said, actually the experiment was a valid experiment and it is reproducible and it proves the power of mind, but not the power of prayer. The preacher just misinterpreted it. And I think that's pretty clear. You know, voodoo works, but it doesn't have God involved in it. You know, hexing works. All those things have histories of working in certain cases, and they call power of the mind. So that's enough rocks under that. Now let's move on to law.
There also appear to be laws that determine the behavior and the expression of what is in time, which we see reflected in the way the universe works, the way the galaxies, solar systems, and the planets move, the way gravity always attracts, the way roses always grow on rose bushes and apples on apple trees. There are many laws which never vary. These laws are evidence of the infinite intelligence that leads itself as this majesty we call the universe.
Humans cannot change these laws. No amount of mental effort can really decide 1 second from the sun up a moment earlier. Humans can only affect what humans have created. Laws that cannot be influenced even through spiritual consciousness are reflections of a corresponding law in what is. These laws are expressed absolutely, immutably, impartially, and personally. They are simply more aspects of what is being reflected in time. They can be totally relied on, and they result in the eternal, perfect harmony that, when realized by humans, feels like love. What is consciousness? Law is an aspect of what is. Harmony and love are effects of law.
It's interesting that, first of all, you know, the first point is that there appears to be a design to creation as it is experienced by us unfolding in time. Okay? There are laws that seem to be immutable, and we, in our human experience, see reflections of them. And there are laws that don't change. But Joel is very clear about the fact that you can't change the tides. You know, the timing of the tides. You know, that's an unchangeable thing. It's interesting that Joel and his group in Hawaii could stop hurricanes and stop tidal waves. But they couldn't change the tides by a second. And the reason is that hurricanes and tidal waves, being destructive, are not laws of God, which is eternally harmonious, but are a reflection of human belief in destructive powers. And therefore, tidal waves and hurricanes are human-created, and therefore, Joel's very powerful little healing group could rise above them and dissipate them. And they really did dissipate tidal waves. I mean, tidal waves that were coming to Hawaii just disappeared. And during all the years that Joel was in Hawaii, no hurricane ever struck Hawaii. And the year before he moved to Hawaii, they had their typical share of hurricanes, and the year after he left, they had their typical share of hurricanes. But no hurricanes struck Hawaii when Joel was there, because he realized that that wasn't the law of God, that was just the creation of human mind, and therefore could be changed. Just like flu. The belief in hurricanes and the belief in flu are no different, and neither one can be healed. So that's one of the points here. The other point that I think is interesting is this last statement: what is consciousness? Law is an aspect of what is, and harmony and love are effects of law. The implication there, which is intentional, is that law is higher than love. That God's law is a higher reality than God's love. What is, they could say, what is his law? Because God is such a loaded term, but the law of how things work being unchangeable and being harmonious and being impersonal and being equally expressed and being unavoidable feels to us like love, because we can count on it and we can trust it and we can rest in it, and we can really relax on the fact that the tide's going to come in tomorrow at 6:13 in the morning and it's going to be 3 feet 2 inches high or whatever it's going to be, So law is higher than love, and the fact that the universe works the way it does, absolutely impersonally, and without respect for one person and not for another, without any favoritism or anything like that, the fact that it just works is a higher thing than love, actually. Kind of like the sun. The sun shines on everybody. If you don't have sun in your life, you need to go outside. It's not that the sun is not shining on you.
I'm just scratching my head.
Okay. Is that enough?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's just a couple more details on it. This is like wrapping it up. Let's start on what is I am. Who's got the book? Is that it? Go.
What is I am? What is expression is my consciousness, my awareness. It's not my body, which is one of the things that I am being aware of, not my mind, of which I am also being aware. My body and mind are not the spiritual being that I am. In this human experience, I have a body and a mind. The individual expression of consciousness that I am is my consciousness, my sense of self, my sense of I am. The awareness here, now, of which I am aware, that has been constant throughout my life.
This sense right now, when I say I am, this consciousness, this awareness, the fact that I'm looking at you, or that I'm aware and conscious, and can say I, and I'm referring to this consciousness with saying I, that is what I'm talking about. What is the expression is my consciousness, my awareness. Okay? This consciousness that I'm conscious of, the awareness that I'm aware of, is what is expression as me. Okay, so the next paragraph.
My sense of I am, which is simply a statement that I am experiencing awareness, is an individual expression of what it is knowing that it is. There is only one I am expressed, one consciousness expressed, as there is only one life expressed. The consciousness that I am aware of is the same consciousness that you are aware of, only the content differs. Thus, anytime I want to be aware of the presence of what is, I need only be aware that I am. Aware that I am aware, and that awareness is what is.
Okay, now that's the meditation for a lifetime. Well, this consciousness that I am is the consciousness. It's not my consciousness. And that consciousness that you are is this consciousness that I am. Okay? It's the one consciousness that's expressed here, and I say I am, and it's expressed there, and you say I am, and it's expressed there, and you say I am, and it's the one consciousness expressing itself as I am, but it's as these individual I am. Okay? So, that consciousness, this consciousness, is the expression of God as impersonal individual consciousness. Okay? So if I want to be aware of the presence of God, all I have to be is aware that I am. Because it's not Lee is, it's I am. Okay? Get that. It's not Lee is, not Dana is, it's I am. I am there, I am here, I am here. Okay? So if you want to experience the presence of God, be aware that I am. And start throwing the stuff out of I am that's not part of I am. Which is to say, throw out your body. I am not my body, I have a body. Throw out your mind. I am not my mind, I have a mind. Throw out your thoughts. I am not my thoughts, I have thoughts. Throw out your perceptions. I am not my perceptions, I have perceptions. They're all your concepts. I am not my concepts. I have concepts. Okay? But you can do this. You can see that. You can say what I just said yourself and know it's true. I'm not my concept. I have concepts. I'm not my body. I have a body. Okay? You can see that too. And when you throw out all the stuff that you're not, what's left is an experience of the presence of God. And everything else is the shit on the lens that you were looking through. The thought that I am the body, the thought that I am this personal we, the thought that I have thoughts. All that stuff is the dust on the lens. It's a lot like a fish swimming around looking for water. Very much like that. Never knowing that it's experiencing water all the time. It's breathing water and swimming in water, and this body is made up out of water and everything.
It's feeling like, sometimes when you're looking in a mirror, and if there's another mirror, you get this feeling that you're in the mirror, and the mirror, and the mirror, and it goes on forever. You get that illusion in a mirror like that?
I know that what you're talking about with mirrors, but I don't have that experience with what I've been talking about. But it is all mirror. So let's read through the last two paragraphs, and then we'll still have 20 minutes or so that we can fill out one section with the two paragraphs, and then we can spend 20 minutes or so playing with it. Who's next to read? Read the whole thing, Jess. Two paragraphs.
What is present, where what is realized. As the final verse of this chapter and the lead into the next chapter will observe this self-evident statement. Whatever is in my individual consciousness is what I am conscious of. Aware of what I'm experiencing, and what I'm not conscious of, I'm not experiencing. So the extent to which I'm aware of what is the extent to which what is within my personal experience. If all I'm conscious of is my limited five-sense concept of myself and world, then that's my experience. To the extent that I am conscious of what really is, that is what I experience. But if I want my experience to include more of the characteristics of what is, I need to become more aware of what is. I experience the harmony that is the nature of what is, to the extent that I'm aware of the presence of what is as my life.
Did you get that? If you think about it, it should be self-evident that my experience is the content of my consciousness. I mean, conscious and experience are almost identical words. I can't possibly experience anything I'm not conscious of. I can't be conscious of anything I'm not experiencing. I mean, they're really identical words, okay? So, whatever is in my consciousness, this is really back to the action that we talk about so much in the script and kid workshops and all that. This is back to the action that my experience is a reflection of the content of my consciousness. What I'm conscious of is what I experience, is what that says, right? And it's not that the experience comes in and determines what I'm conscious of. That's the error that we have. We have the idea that this experience is coming in and we become conscious of it, but it's the other way around. I'm conscious. There's the content of my consciousness, and it determines my experience because I'm experiencing what's in my consciousness. So, if the only thing if my consciousness is centered on my five senses and my physical body and all this, then my experience is a very human one. And if my consciousness is of the reality of what is, then my experience is of much more of what is, or at least my experience will reflect the nature of what is rather than reflecting the nature of human consciousness. It's back to the stuff we talked about in some of the other workshops, like I have a human part of me that's aligned with universal human consciousness. And what it's hearing is what the 6 billion are believing. All the scripts and all the fears and all the terrors and all the worries and all the rage and all of that, the human part of me is aligned with that. The spiritual being part of me is aligned with God consciousness. Okay? So to the extent that I'm in my human experience, I'm having a human experience. And to the extent that I'm in my spiritual being, I'm having a God experience. And the God experience is blissful and harmonious, and the human experience is what you see and what you hear in the news every morning. Okay? And it's which way I'm aligned. I am a dual in nature. And, I start as a 99.999% human being, and I can only tune into the human consciousness, but as we do this kind of work, the pipe opens, my awareness of the presence of God expands, my spiritual adult grows, for those of you who do the workshop. I become more aware of the presence of God, and to the extent that I'm aware of the presence of God, my life is reflecting harmony, and to the extent that I'm aware of the content that tuned into human consciousness, my life is full of ups and downs and good and bad and right and wrong and good turning to bad and bad turning, all that nonsense, So it's like the radio that I talk about that has 2 stations on it, KGOD and WNMD for world mind, but for human consciousness. But like you've got a radio station and it's got a dial on it that goes from WNMD to KGOD. And it's got a spring on it that holds it over WNMD. So when you're born, it's locked on WNMD. And as we do our spiritual work, we develop enough strength to occasionally turn it over to KGOD. And we tune in God consciousness. And while we're on WNMD, we're experiencing what you read about in the news every morning. And when we're over on KGOD, we're experiencing harmony and bliss. The problem is the minute we let go, the spring snaps it back to WNMD. Okay? And that's sort of the way the story appears to be.
I thought you might need to change it back to what the last was.
But every time you change it over to KGOD, the spring gets weaker. Is the point. Every time you turn it over here, the spring weakens. Every time you turn it over here, the spring weakens. So when you turn it over here, the spring back slower. And you turn it over, and eventually, if you've turned it enough and held it over here long enough, the spring finally gets to where it's no longer spring, and you can put it on either side at will and leave it there. And that's sort of what the work looks like. A poor analogy, but at least it gives us something to do our intellects with for a while. Because they're getting pretty scarlet about now, I suspect.
Some people, you said that, we often in 99.9, human consciousness, and these some come in even as they're born with more, spiritual goals, or...
I don't mean you come into this life at 99.999%. I mean, you created originally purely human. That's what Barbara means when she says we're all born asleep or born ignorant. We all come in totally aligned with human consciousness. And slowly we come out of it. Yeah, it's the process of coming from 99.999 to 0 is a process over hundreds of lifetimes. So yes, some people come in much higher than others. Much further down the pike. So, yes.
I was just listening to a Joel tape where he was talking about this in the sense that he was saying that we don't meditate just for the sake of meditating. We meditate to get to click, to get to God awareness. And it's exactly what you're saying here that he was saying, which is he said that he needs to make sure that he would have that experience at least once a day, and then he worked up to 3 or 4 times a day, and then he worked up to 20 times a day until it got to the point where that was his
experience all the time. So it made more sense when I read this last paragraph here that I experienced the harmony to the extent that I'm aware of the presence of what is.
Sure.
That's what he was talking about.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. And he did it the hard way. I mean, Joel worked 8 months before he had his first little flip, he says. And then he worked several weeks before he had the next one, and then sometime later he had 2 in one day, but he just kept working, and and so he had 2 or 3 realizations a day, and he got to the point, where I'm sure at the end he was always aware of the presence of God, and the question was whether he was, had just a little piece back here that was kept in touch with God, or whether he was totally aware of the presence of God. It got very difficult for him at the end to even come back and be rational in our sense of rational. It's nice for this to be worked out. It does not seem to be useful in this part. Short class tonight, huh? So guess what the flashcard is? God is my consciousness. We'll use God rather than what is, because that will bring it closer to home. And you can actually vary the pronoun depending on the situation. Use God is his consciousness, or God is her consciousness, or God is my consciousness, or God is their consciousness, or God is its consciousness, or whatever is catching your attention. If somebody's in your face, God is his consciousness, or God is her consciousness. And if the CIA is after you, God is their consciousness. And if you're confronted with a situation that you don't think you're going to be smart enough to handle, God is my consciousness. Okay? So whatever you're dealing with, pull up God is X's consciousness there. That'll be the flashcard. If you're uncomfortable, God is my consciousness. If your cat's on your belly, which mine was a while ago when I was thinking about the flashcard, God is its consciousness. Mm-hmm. Next week we start with what appears to be let's get quiet for a few minutes. We got lots of time for us. Quiet. Keep going back over what is. Go back over, read the section titles. Remember what they mean, review this. Go back and just look at the names of the sections and remember what that meant. Keep that in your head. Keep it in front of you, otherwise, until you're ready to jump to the old concept of God. Okay, thanks for coming. I love you all.